This is so nonsensical. Triggered by the doors opening, a little bell chimes out to signal that guests have arrived. Miss Fay's abode was not a normal residence by any measure, a fact any entering visitor was immediately made acutely aware of. The first thing one ever beheld upon stepping foot in her home was the breathtaking sight of towering bookshelves sprawling out before them. Oh, never mind. I thought this was in the Golden Dream. I guess it's in somebody's house. That's a pretty bitchin' library to have in just like a regular old house. I was like, my house, I could barely fit my bed. It was no overstatement to say the Pharaoh house, Pharaoh, it's Pharaoh, we're going with Pharaoh, house owned and administrated Socratrine's largest library. Okay, never mind, they're in just a library. The large central room we were in easily dominated the majority of the building, containing everything from recently bound novels to dusty tomes that spoke of ancient history. It was a place that bled an otherworldly sense of mystique. Hello! Kalia's announcement of our arrival reverberates throughout the massive room. Donk. Somebody got donked. And then brought a slide whistle. A sound like something hit in wood, followed by the racket of collapsing books. Oh, is that what that sounds like? Boing. Rounding the corner, we discover Alouette, swaying amidst a pile of fallen books with stars orbiting around her head. Oh, you surprised, Alouette? Are you okay, Alouette? Didn't you hear the bell? Alouette had her head in the bookcase. What? So she didn't hear. Oh, she had her head in the bookcase? Taking care not to step on any books, I pat Alouette on the head. Aw, that's so condescending. Pat a pion, pain, go away. So, like, I know they're all children, but is she, like, 4? Wah! Thank you, Ade! Aside from her job at the Morella Bakery, Alouette also had a job working here under Miss Fay. Well, she was pretty lousy at the bakery, and she seems to be tripping over herself in the bookshop. Why do they keep hiring her? She seems to have some trouble with life in general. Dealing with such a hefty workload day to day, she's quite the workaholic, isn't she? They're all out of order now. Turning to the nearby shelf, Alouette begins the painstaking task of reorganizing the books in their proper order. Do you want us to help out? It'll go faster if we chip in. But Alouette shakes her head. No, can't lend a hand. If not in right order, Belly will scold, Alouette. Scold! Scold! A voice speaks up from behind as Alouette rather humorously impersonates an angry Miss Fay. Oh... I do not sound like that! Also, don't make it seem like I bully you all the time, Alouette. Miss Belisaria Pharaoh. I'm gonna make her sound like Pharaoh. If I've done enough little Karibo impersonations in this whole thing, what's one more? The influential heiress of the old aristocracy House of Pharaoh. A crisply dressed woman with roseate eyes, she was childhood friends with Papa and the Loritz dad, Autun. She was also Mother's cousin, being one of the few that shared a close relationship with her. After we're done here, I'll stay behind. There were questions I wanted to ask her in light of what I had learned yesterday. Isn't it true you bully Alouette all the time, though? Bullying's such a crude way to put it. That's not really a great impression, but we'll go with it anyway. There's more than one way for someone to express their love, you know. Belly loves Alouette, right? Yes, I do. Smiling wryly, Miss Fay ruffles Alouette's head. So does everyone just pet this girl? The books! Alouette is fixing the books! You can leave that for later. We have guests to accommodate now. They'd likely find tea and treats agreeable after their voyage through the rain. Asking for a friend, but who made these treats that are coming? I did. What of it? Guess we're playing the lottery today. Because every character in this story is just really rude to every other character. Do you see how rude? They're ordinary pastries, I'll have you know. I think Miss Faye's cooking is tasty. Sometimes. Miss Faye was an enigma when it came to the kitchen. While some of the best meals I've ever had were made by her hand, she also holds the title of serving some of the worst meals I've eaten in my life. Probably because she has a tendency of getting bored and turning the recipe into an experiment, adding insane things that make food bubble, change colors, or even explode. I guess that's just her nature as head of Sockatrine's Chemical Research and Development Department, or Royal Alchemist, as she seemed to prefer, despite its datedness. Oh yes, nobody's ever heard of an alchemist in modern times. Tea and treats, Alouette. Alouette will bring tea and treat. And this weird, stunted delivery that everybody seems to have. Everybody talks in ellipses and hyphens. It's really weird to read and say. After stacking the books up in neat piles, Alouette disappears deeper into the building. Shall we retreat to our usual haven, then? With a wave of her hand, Miss Faye beckons us further in. A cozy alcove on the second floor, lined with cushions and dominated by a comfy carpet. It was Miss Faye's favorite spot, reserved for her personal use. Upon arriving, Miss Faye settles into her iconic reading chair at the head of the carpet before surveying over our group. Question mark at the beginning of a sentence. I just realized, but Noletta not here. But is Noletta not here? That required double the question mark. Noletta slept in, so she won't be joining us today. Yeah, also her brother was gouging his own skin off. That was also a thing that happened. Is that so? Miss Faye? It's nothing. Was just thinking that you seem to be limping a bit, odd, eh? Nothing escapes those piercing rose eyes of hers. Or that sick-ass beret. It's possible she knows more about Project Binaire. Oh, fudge, I don't even remember that. What was that? Project Binaire, I think that was when they injected those other two kids with mist. I should take the opportunity to inquire later. Excuse me. I guess we did go pretty ham in the capture the flag yesterday. Oh, we went ham. That's hard as a motherfucker. That's amazing. So it wasn't a pebble. Are you actually hurt after all? Let me take a look. That really tickles Lerona. Parry riposte. Ugh. Boing. Wah! 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 She wad. Wah! Don't tickle me, you baba. Are we tickling Lerona now? Me too. This is so uncomfortable. Oh, fuck. How did he get here? No! Miss Faye gives a little sigh at the scene playing out before her. Ha! Kids. Anyway, before we settle down for story time, why don't you children give me a rundown on your week? Oh, no, please don't. I don't need a recap. I don't want a recap. Kalia quickly takes point, chattering on about our construction project, games day, and other hijinks as Triss acts out key events in tune to her narrative. Occasionally, I interject, usually to contribute a different perspective from Kalia's mildly, heavily biased account. She had that thought in her mind now, did she? But for the most part, I watch on from the side as the Lyric tag team covers our bases. Yeah, construction project, played capture the flag, hung out in the rain and went to a bakery. We live a very exciting life. Where did she... Oh. Eventually, Alouette reappears with a teapot and a tray of sweets. Who wants to bet that she drops them? But while the others dig into the provided treats eagerly, I can't seem to work up much of an appetite. Damn, she didn't drop them. Curling up on the carpet, I snuggle up against Alouette's lap. She had taken a seat alongside us at Miss Faye's insistence that she take a break. For that, I was grateful, as Alouette's caresses were a welcome reprieve from the day's melancholy. Good God. I can't say I anticipated it, but Mother Nature's been kind enough to set the mood for today's tale. Once we conclude our weekly report, Oh, that wasn't her talking. Ha! Miss Faye begins leafing through a weathered-looking book, causing the Lorette to shift giddily in anticipation. Much like how Alouette was unmatched in the art of head pats, Miss Faye had no equal when it came to narration. I would fight her on that, because I think I'm narrating like a damn sumbitch right now. I'm doing pretty good at it. I don't care what this lady with purple hair and a slightly darker purple beret has to say. There was something about her intonations that evoked and immersed a universe within you. Like a shepherd herding dreams, she never failed to capture and captivate our imaginations. The story I've selected is a bit darker than what you're used to. Oh good, finally, darkness. I have some reservations on whether or not you're ready for it. I'm ready for it. We're ready for it. If you'd like, I can always choose a sprightlier piece. Is that supposed to be a challenge? Man, I can listen to stories so good. You ain't got shit on me. You better not underestimate what we can handle, Miss Faye. Asking us if we want to bail after dangling bait in front of our eyes is in poor taste, Miss Faye. It can't possibly be as sad as last week's story, right? The curiosity of youth is such a lovely thing. Very well. I'll be expecting a good discussion afterwards then. Oh good! The video game equivalent of a book report! I'm so excited. Our attention fully at her command, Miss Faye clears her throat before beginning. Today I'll be recounting to you a story that speaks of the origin of rain. The origin of rain. Like the Mortal Kombat character? Or... There was once a village in a faraway land. Its people lived harmoniously off the land, leading happy and fulfilling lives. Life was vibrant and full of color, and children played carefreely amidst chirping birds. But one day, the clouds disappeared from the sky, and rain stopped falling upon the land. Wait a minute, I thought this was supposed to be the origin of rain. But the rain's already been here. The rivers running through the fields dwindled and dried up, leaving nothing for the people to drink. Soon, even the crops began to wilt and shrivel away, causing the people to despair, or Zetsubo, as food ran short. Eking out everything, I know it's eking, but eking out everything they could to make it to the next day, the villagers managed to endure. But no matter how long they held on, the rain did not come. No matter how much they entreated the heavens, the sky did not hear their prayers. It was when all hope seemed to be lost that whispers of a heavenly savior began to spread throughout the village. Somewhere in the nearby forest, where the foliage had remained green and healthy, there was rumored to be a goddess with miraculous powers, a goddess blessed with the ability to produce streams of pure, unadulterated water. This is like the plot of Apostle. A great movie on Netflix. Highly recommend. Families with no options left clung to this mysterious rumor, searching the forest desperately for the fabled goddess. Then, one fateful day, a mother whose son was on the verge of death finally encountered the goddess of legend. Oh, that's a good thing to just happen upon. However, she was no divine goddess with a heavenly aura. She was but a little chipmunk of a girl whose head barely peeked above the shrubbery. Please, save my child, the mother begged to the girl with all her heart. Again, she's talking to basically a mouse. She's talking to Mrs. Oh God, why am I? Oh, I'm blanking on the name. This was gonna be such a good joke. What is the character's name in Secret of Nim? Mrs. Bigsby? Mrs. Bigsby. Mrs. Bigsby. Please save my child, Mrs. Bigsby. He won't respond to me. He hasn't had anything to drink for days. But no matter how much she pled, the girl could not fathom the mother's words. Having lived in the forest for all her life, she did not know of language. This reminds me of earlier in the game when the story girl did not know of words. So a lot of characters in these stories just don't know of basic things. However, when the girl saw the boy's wasted body, she was overcome with great sorrow. He was suffering and in great pain, and so, wishing that the boy wouldn't die, the girl leaned over him and began to cry. Oh good, phoenix tears. Big, beautiful tears began to drip from the girl's eyes in unbelievable amounts, trickling through the boy's parched lips. Ew. Letting him drink tears as clear and as pure as the rain that once fell upon the land, the girl pulled the boy back from the boundary of life and death. The smile of a young girl whose face was still wet with tears, that was the sight the boy opened his eyes to upon being saved from certain death. Meanwhile, having witnessed a miracle, the mother cried out in gratitude and implored the girl to come back to the village so that she might help the others in need. Unable to comprehend anything, though, the girl could only let herself be taken away from her tranquil garden. Her first exposure to the outside world deeply affected her. The village she was brought to, behold, had become but a wasteland of death and decay. Immense sorrow filled the girl's heart at the sight of so many people suffering. So she went to the Pride Lands in The Lion King after Scar took over. Because weather doesn't like it when evil takes over. Spreading the word of her miraculous life-giving tears, the mother took the girl to her home as if she were one of her own. Countless came to her doorstep in search of salvation from their unending hell. The girl wept for every one of them, forsaking none in her boundless compassion. By drinking up the pristine tears she shed, the people managed to recover from the brink of collapse. For several weeks, the villagers managed to stave off their deprivation, but though the tears she wept were enough to quench their thirst, their neglected hunger continued to grow by the hour. People whose lives she had poured her heart out to save began to perish from starvation before long. In their desperation to survive, the villagers were forced to break an unspeakable taboo. Uh-oh. That taboo was cannibalism! Of course it was. Of course it was. Those that were unable to defend themselves were the first to go. Oh, I love this. The young, the elderly, the infirm. The infirm? There's a better way to say that, I think, than the infirm. The girl watched on as a baby was ripped from its mother's arms and devoured by villagers that had lost their mother. It's mother. It's that mother. Mother with the exclamation point. They just came in and they took the baby and neighbors that had stuck with each other through thick and thin began to turn on one another, painting the landscape sickening shades of scarlet. This is amazing. I wish more people were here, because this is truly an incredible story that needs to be experienced. Those scarlet visions tormented the girl, bringing her such anguish that blood flowed from her eyes as she wept for the village's withered fields. Oh, it was then that from the crimson tears that touched the cracked soil, flora began to spring up wondrously from the earth. So there you go. If you go to a barren wasteland, just eat each other, and then life begins anew. Upon witnessing this miracle, the villagers tried to use the girl's power to nourish their fields. But though the girl wept torrents throughout the day and night at the villagers' plight, it was never the tears of blood that they needed. It was in that hopeless situation that the villagers came to a terrible conclusion. If the girl would not cry tears of blood, they would have to take it from her. The only way to garner the blood they needed was by cutting into her body and draining it. Oh, Jesus, this is, A stone shrine atop a hill overlooking the village. The people locked the girl up there, driving her to a state of perpetual near death as they extracted her blood over and over again. This is literally the plot of Apostle. I said it earlier, I was saying it again. This is Apostle. It's the only way we can survive, was how they rationalized it. Whenever it seemed like the girl was becoming numb and crying less as a result, the villagers had no choice but to devise crueler ways to hurt her. It was a wretched state of existence in which they could only subsist if the girl's blood and tears flowed freely. But even then, the girl never forsook the villagers. With a smile that grew weaker by the day, she continued to cry, thinking only of their sake. However, her smile did not ease the villagers' hearts. They feared it, were afraid of it, afraid of what that smile meant, of what they had become. And so they began to chant it? Like, smile, smile. A curse, or perhaps a prayer to absolve them of their sins. A witch! Oh, so we've gone from Apostle, and now it's the Vavitch. She's a Vavitch. She's the reason the rain stopped falling upon the land, so that she could be kidnapped by crazy villagers and gutted and drained and drawn and quartered. What a devious scheme. An incorruptible smile that not even layers of blood and tears could blemish, like the world's worst metaphorical lasagna. It was the smile of a Vavitch. And while there was none that could turn a deaf ear to the girl's sobs, which trickled without end from the top of the hill, no one spoke of it. Their throats quenched and their bellies full, the villagers chose not to see, to not hear, to not speak. For the land had begun to flourish and regain its color under the nourishment of the girl's blessed blood and tears. At long last, the people had regained a semblance of the peaceful days they once knew. But there were those who could not accept it. Back in the house the girl had called home since coming to the village. The young boy whose life had been saved in the forest asked of his mother, "Mother, why won't you drink?" No matter how many times the boy brought a cup of water to her mouth, the mother would not part her lips. The family had been haunted by the girl's tormented cries for many sleepless nights now. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." As she lay in bed, she would repeat these words to herself without end. "I should have never brought you to the village." The mother had come to view the girl as her own child during the time they lived together. Unable to bear the thought of drinking her daughter's tears, as she was tortured day in and out, the mother had gone without drinking for days. Now on the verge of dying from thirst, the mother spoke to her son for the final time. "Please, grant your mother one last selfish wish. That girl, do you mean Sis?" "Yeah. Yes, your sweet, beloved sister." The mother grasped her son's hand tightly as she spoke her final words. "Please be by her side." Not get her out of here? I feel like that's more prudent. The boy waited until nightfall to carry out his mother's dying wish. Under a moonless, starless sky, he climbed the hill to where the girl was being held. Breaking into the temple, from which countless screams cascaded and flowed, the boy was met with a heart-wrenching sight. The girl's small figure had once been filled with the vigor of youth, but now she was barely recognizable. From hollow eyes that had endured the darkest of human despair, fountains of water were streaming unendingly, serving as the origin of the rivers running outside. But wait a minute, at the beginning of the story, the rivers were already there. Rain had already existed. It just stopped. Now this is the origin of rivers. Sis! Sis! The boy struggled to release the girl from her restraints, but it was no use. Hands the boy had held steady as he taught her how to write. They were now twisted from ruthless disfigurement. Wrists the boy had made little bracelets for. From the flora the girl called forth, They were now melded with the blood-stained iron shackling her. The girl stared vacantly at the boy as he continued his futile attempt to free her, unable to understand. She didn't want him to be sad, but he was not hurt or hungry in any way. He had even grown healthier since the last time they met. So why? Why was he making such a pained face? Knowing that the villagers would be back soon, the boy fell to his knees and began to cry. He didn't want her to be trapped here any longer. He didn't want her to be hurt anymore. But there wasn't anything he could do. That was when he felt a light touch his chin. Clanking her chains as she reached out with what remained of her hands, the girl lifted the boy's head and began to weakly wipe away his tears. When his vision cleared, the boy saw that the girl had a beautiful smile on her face. A smile just like the time she first saved him. Even when chains had stolen away her freedom, deprivation had wasted her figure, and abuse had dulled the light in her eyes, her smile had not been lost. More than anything, the boy wanted to protect that smile. And so, with trembling movements, the boy reached out and slowly wrapped his fingers around the girl's neck. Unable to stop himself from crying at the thought of what he was doing, the boy tightened his grip. But the girl's smile never left her. Aw, how heartwarming. Even as the strength slowly left her body, she did not stop. So wait a minute, hold on. She's been... It doesn't really tell how long this has been going on, but she's being gutted day in and day out to help the fields, grow the crop. And she cries all the time. She would like this because she cry every time. And now like a fucking 6-year-old, like a 6-year-old's little meatball arms are gonna, that's gonna do her in. Well, I mean, I guess they said she was about the size of a chipmunk, so guess I'm reading too much into it. Wiping away his tears, her hand continued to move. It was only when that hand fell back limply to her side, the boy knew it was over. Water was no longer flowing from the girl's eyes, which were loosely shut in a state of peace. She's not being guarded. She's not being guarded by anybody. There's nobody who'd be like, hey, you know this divine goddess who is basically in charge of making sure we stay alive? Maybe want to put like an armed guard in front of her so nobody's like, man, I'm gonna take this goddess for myself. I'm a freer and I'm a bounce somewhere else. Water was no longer flowing, which were loosely yeah, I said that. Even now, it looked like she was smiling serenely as she slept. She ain't sleeping, dude. Easing her to the ground, the boy watched on as the artificial rivers lost their origin and began to run dry. Though he knew the villagers would return at it. Oh, they're all gone. Oh, thank goodness. They all collectively left. To do what? Who knows? The boy couldn't bring himself to leave the girl's side. Before long, countless people swarmed to the temple, enraged that their life-giving water had stopped flowing. They could not forgive the culprit that had destroyed the village's foundation and condemned them all to certain death. You killed the witch! You killed the witch! She's not a witch! She's not a witch! They dressed me up like this! To the villagers' outrage, the boy roared back with anger of his own. The girl had wiped away everyone's tears, stopping at nothing to help others in need. But who had been there to wipe away her tears? The villagers seized and beat the boy, dragging him outside and tying him to a stake. I want to remind the whole world here that this is a story that is being told to, like, 11-year-old kids by a librarian who took it upon herself to be like, you know what, kids, I'm going to give you a story. It's a little bit dark, though. Here's a story about a girl who gets gutted and murdered, and then the boy who tried to save her by murdering her, he gets murdered, too. This is a great story. I mean, it's fucking all ages. Rated G. So they tied him to a stake. Lighting a fire beneath his feet, they threw rocks and cursed the boy as he burned. Oh my god! You killed the witch! You've killed us all! Even as his flesh blistered and blackened under the flames, the boy continued to cry out, "She's not a witch! She's not a witch!" In a broken voice, the boy repeated it over and over again. "She's not a witch." But his cries fell upon unhearing ears until at long last he stopped moving. It was then that something impossible began to happen. Something began to fall from the sky, wet and clear like the sky itself was crying. It was rain. Okay, so if it is, unless it's acid rain, this is the wrong ending. This is the wrong ending to go with. They should not get rain back because they murdered 2 children. It was the girl who had ascended into the sky upon being released from her cage of flesh. She had watched on as the boy screamed in tear-choked agony. Cursed by everyone, forsaken by the world, he died in great pain, his voice having reached no one. She had watched, powerless to stop it, no matter how much she wished to. She's not a very good goddess, then. And so, with eyes overflowing with more tears than ever before, from the heavens she cried. Clouds came and covered the sky, raining torrential swaths of water that swept away all in its wake. Okay, good. So the villagers all drown, everyone dies, happy ending. The girl wept madly, unable to stop even as her tears swallowed and extinguished all life. So not just the villagers, everything. She grieved alone in the sky for many years before her tears ran dry, flooding the land several times over. Jesus Christ.